Good evening. Welcome to another segment of Tuesday Together Talk. I'm Reverend Rebecca Burrow. I am the founder and CEO of Building Reconciliation, Inclusion, Diversity, and Gender Equity. I'm excited to be here on this Black History Month evening. This is our first segment for Black History Month. So this is going to be an exciting night. I'm so thankful for those of you that have joined in with us. I have with me this evening my son in Reverend, I was going to say Reverend Doctor. That's because he's on his way, but Reverend Markus-Derek White. And he's going to just hang out with me for this evening. We're going to have a very just organic conversation this evening. So I want you all to do what you do. Chime in, put your questions in the comments, put your comments in the comments section. I'm glad just to be here this evening. So I see you now. Now says I'm tuned in. Hello. Now you be safe out there on those roads, and thank you for tuning in. Anybody else out there, just give us a shout out. I want to hear from y'all tonight. This is a very important conversation, but like I said, it's going to be an organic conversation. So I'm going to ask Marcus just to chime in, say hello to everybody. And Marcus, some things have changed in your life since you were last on Tuesday Together Talk. So just update us with where you are and what you've been up to.
Hi, it's good to be here. Um, since the last time I've been on here, I started a PhD program at Anderson University. It's a PhD in leadership with a concentration in ministry. So that's a lot. And as I see on the screen, I've been assigned a pastorate by our Episcopal leadership in the AME Church. Bishop Frank Madison Reed III has assigned me to a wonderful church called New Bethel AME Church of Sulphur Springs in Sulphur Springs community, predominantly Black community, historical Black community within Tampa. And gentrification has not touched it in over 100 years, and so it's a rich community, and so just wonderful to serve there.
Well, Marcus, I'm delighted that you are here. And I think you're my first guest of this new year.
Wow.
So I appreciate you being here with me on this evening. Tonight, I want to talk about our Black history. It cannot be erased. You can't erase Black history no matter how hard you try. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation is because as we've been looking at all the different things going on within our society, and I know we've been hearing we got a lot going on in Florida. Um, with Black history, critical race theory. We have, in addition to the voter suppression and all those other things, we have so much going on where a lot of our teachers and a lot of folks are just concerned about how Black history is being taught or not being taught, and particularly during Black History Month. So, a lot of people have expressed a great deal of concern about what's going to happen to Black history in schools? What's going to happen to our children? How are they going to learn about history? And we've seen a lot of outrage and concern. And really, to be honest, it's definitely something we should be concerned about. But as I was speaking to you, Marcus, in one of our conversations, I told you that I was not concerned about Black history being erased because I do not believe that any one person, any one legislation or political move will will be able to erase Black history. So I wanted to talk this evening about Black agency, and that means how we take ownership of our history in order to make sure that in order to ensure that it is alive and that it is taught factually, and that not only do our children learn Black history, but also that we find people, white allies, that are interested in continuing to learn about Black history and the Black experience, and that they also become champions of Black history as well. So I just want to start tonight. I see a few people that have come in. Jackie Edmonds says I made it. Yahoo! Good evening, y'all. Good evening, Jackie. Niall said, "Hey, Marcus." So Niall he remembers you, and I know that guys had an opportunity to meet when you were in Indianapolis. So that means, Marcus, that you are now a regular, and you're now part of the family, I guess we should say, right? So I do want to start this evening with a question, and I especially want for the folks out in the audience to participate in this question. I want to hear your comments, but I want, Marcus, for you to start here. Who is responsible for teaching Black history? Who do you think holds that responsibility?
So, I think in the onset, I do want to make the comment and then come back to the question because I think it provides context.
Mhm.
I think as we had that conversation, I agree with you, um, or maybe you didn't share fully in it that I don't necessarily, or when I heard the news of Black history being threatened to be taken out of schools and not taught in the context of schools for our children, I wasn't necessarily bothered by hearing that threat or that that agenda because I don't necessarily think that Black history is taught in our schools.
Mhm.
Um, Especially being an educator, former educator, a teacher, I see firsthand that Black history is really taught on the margins. The depth of history from a Black context is not really taught. We get Harriet Tubman here, Martin Luther King there, Rosa Parks there, Frederick Douglass there.
Right.
But the in depth of Black history is not taught. So to say that you'll stop teaching Black history really isn't, saying much because you never taught it, in essence, from the beginning. Um, so who do I believe should be responsible for teaching Black history? It's twofold for me. Parents, number one, I
Mhm.
think is crucial to teaching our children their history. And if parents don't know the history, there are a plethora of books,
Mhm.
um, online tools and resources
Mhm.
that one can utilize to teach oneself in order to teach their children. I think that is critical. I think it starts at home first, but then secondarily, and maybe the greatest institution that I believe that should teach Black history and continue to teach it is the Black church.
Yeah.
I believe that the Black church is the preserver, the historian, the holder of our history, and who better to teach it than our religious institution,
Mhm.
being that of the church. And so, to me, those two staples of parents teaching children, and then the Black church not only teaching its parishioners, but then the community.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I definitely agree with you. And come on, audience members, I want you to chime into this question. On this question, who is responsible for teaching Black history? I agree with you, Marcus. I know that a lot of folks got really upset with the idea that there's a committee actually in Florida that
Mm.
the governor is putting together to ensure that critical race theory is not taught in schools. They don't teach it in schools here anyway, in public
Right.
schools, anyway. So it's a waste of our tax-paying dollars for one thing. So that's a concern, but that's a whole nother conversation we'll have on another day. But uh, the way I think that the wording is in the legislation that he is trying to construct, is it has a lot to do with white fragility and ensuring that we are mindful of white people's feelings when it comes to Black history. The challenge and the issue for me that I see is that uh, you can't teach American history without teaching Black history, because they are woven together. In order, if you want to teach a factual history about the country, about the country from its inception, then you definitely have to teach about Black history. I think you
I agree. I think number one, American history is Black history.
right.
Not in the fact that it's interwoven within white history. No, legitimately American history is Black
Yes.
history. America would not be the country it is without 400 years of free labor from whom?
Right.
Black people. That
Right.
legitimately, America was never superpower in its founding. Even I think within its first 50 years, it was still far behind on a grading scale. But once we saw how the South produced its wealth and the overall scheme of it in America, we saw where America got its popularity, its wealth, and it was legitimately from Black people. And so to me, yeah, to be relegated to, Black history to be relegated to 28 days. And again, we only teach, the Mount Rushmore of Blacks
Yeah.
during Black history, and not teaching the hidden figures, if we would call it, of Black history in America. And again, I don't know if it's the fact of, I saw a post the other day, in essence, saying of why people are desiring to move away from not only Black history, critical race theory,
Mhm.
and all of those other genres of Black history in America, is white guilt, or and
Mhm.
children will have to learn that their parents were the ones who threw rocks on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and all those kind of things. But I mean, to me, again, Black history has never been taught in this country.
Right.
I mean, if we look at the Civil War, not the Civil War, if we look at the American Revolution, the only reason we won the American Revolution is because slaves were enlisted into the military to fight the Britons. That's the only reason we won.
Mhm.
That it was the color regiment
Mhm.
that enabled us to win the American Revolution.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, stuff like that. I mean, again, if we weren't taught, you would hear that, we won the American Revolution because of George Washington and because of other generals. No, it was because Black people were enlisted and used as soldiers to give us the numbers, and that's the reason we won the American Revolution. But you don't hear that in history.
Yeah.
You don't hear that taught in American history.
Yeah.
That had it have not have been for Black soldiers being in the American Revolution,
Mhm.
that's the reason that we won. You don't hear that. You hear strategic, battles and fronts and things like that.
Yes.
So again, to me, Black history has never, in its real essence, has been taught. And so again, to me, hearing that Black history and is being threatened to take out of school because of white guilt and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I think you raise a really interesting point. I think what I'm hearing you say, instead of looking at this as a threat, this is really an opportunity for Black Americans to do what we used to do. I'm a little bit older than you, but not too terribly much older. But I remember how storytelling and narratives were so very important when I was a kid, where I would hear the stories of a history from my parents or my grandparents, and so they were able to give us what their lived experiences were, as told by their parents or their grandparents, and so I think that's one of the reasons why I will continue to say that Black history can't be erased. If we get back into the habit of telling our stories to our children, uh, to make sure that our stories are taught in the church. But I want to also challenge, Marcus, the churches that consider themselves multicultural. These churches that consider themselves multicultural, they have a responsibility to talk about and have someone with some expertise there teaching Black history, not just to Black people in their congregation, but also to the white folks or other persons in their congregations that have not lived the Black experience. So I think there is a responsibility not just for the AME church or the Black Baptist church or the Church of God in Christ or any of those to be responsible for teaching that history. But I want to see some of these interdenominationals or non-denominational, multicultural churches and all these churches with these grand names. I want to see them. I want to hear of them teaching Black history. So you're going to say something.
Yeah, I'm going to give this comment because as I was thinking and listening to you, and even thinking, just upon the conversation, I think American history, and this might be tweetable, I think American history is actually mythology.
Mhm.
American history that is taught in this country is actually mythology and not the reality of true history.
Mhm.
We teach mythology. We
Mhm.
teach what's mythical and what sounds good.
Mhm.
We don't teach the real
It
truth
fits
because it doesn't make America look good.
yeah, it
If
fits an
America,
agenda.
right? It
Uh-huh.
fits the narrative, and
Mhm.
so America doesn't teach history;
Mhm.
they teach mythology because it sounds much better than the reality of what America really has,
Yeah.
her past and what she has shown. And now to get to that, uh, to get to what you raised about multicultural churches.
Yes, I want to challenge them. Absolutely.
Well, I think it's beautiful to
Mhm.
challenge to challenge multicultural churches. I want to even give a running definition, I think, of what a real multicultural church is. I think that's important.
Yeah,
I don't think one can consider themselves a multicultural church just because you have a conglomerate of different
that's right.
ethnicities within
That's
your
right.
congregation. You are truly a multicultural church if your staff reflects it.
Yeah, yeah.
To
Eh,
me, that's a real multicultural
right.
church. If your staff reflects a multicultural presence.
Well, I
So
want to take that a little further, even, and I
come
don't
on.
want us to get sidetracked. But the reason I want to take that further is because what we do see at a lot of multicultural churches is the staff, especially in the music ministry,
Oh, of course.
being
Of
that
course.
presence of Blackness
Of
in
course.
the sound of that organ, that B3,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the sound of that organ, that praise and worship
Yeah.
leader, and all those things that give the appearance of multiculturalism.
Right.
However, there is a lack of inclusion, and that's why I
Yeah.
want to challenge multicultural churches to teach Black history so that there is a presence of inclusion of Black lived experiences within what is considered a multicultural church. So you go
Well,
ahead, give your
well, I
comment
raised the
on the
question.
floor.
I raised the question: is it important for the leadership? Is it
Yes,
important to the leadership?
yes,
Is it important to the
yeah,
leadership?
yeah.
We can say literally, I stay within 5 minutes of the largest multicultural church within Tampa. I won't say its name, but if you know, you know. I stay within walking distance from the largest multicultural church within Tampa. And so it's their main campus. It's the original campus in which they started. There are multiple campuses here. And so to me, um, I know some people who have attended that. I've attended a conference there. It was a marriage conference. It was great. It was very informative, for my marriage and very helpful.
Mhm.
And, I was, very intrigued by the church. And so again, I went online to look at the staff. Now, the church can really be considered the largest African American church because of the numbers of the members there.
Right.
And they put out their sermon series for the year, and of course, within there is nothing that teaches anything according to Black history. And again, when you look at the staff, while the church can be considered the largest African American church, the staff does not reflect that. So again, to me, if you have the membership and the parishioners, but your staff does not reflect it, what's the issue between you knowing what you represent, as in the numbers, but then your staff does not represent that? And so if your staff doesn't represent it, to me, it doesn't seem important for you to teach on it if your staff doesn't represent it. I think you have to model it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it will ever be. I hear the challenge from you.
Yeah.
I do hear the challenge, and I think the challenge is important if you have such a large demographic of one ethnicity, Blacks,
Yeah.
that you should be teaching some history at some point in time that's relegated to Black people. But again, if the staff is not reflective,
Yeah.
it's not a multicultural church to me.
Right. Well,
and I don't think they're going to do it.
Just a commercial break for Bridge, Building Reconciliation, Inclusion, Diversity, and Gender Equity. We are available to help create a more inclusive experience and culture at your church. So just make sure you look us up at www.reconciliationandequity.com, and we'll be more than happy to help you. All right. So let's I want to go ahead. And
I want to say something. I want to say something to I want to respond to Sharon's.
Okay, so I'm going to read it, and
you go read, yeah, because I want to respond to it. I think that I agree, Sharon.
Okay, so Sharon says, I agree that parents should teach Black history. However, the problem is that only Black parents are likely to do so, and it is those other parents and their children that need to understand our history and how it impacts this country, even in its present state. Black, Native American, Asian history is interwoven into the tapestry of this country. The reason those people are confused is because it's not taught that way. Non-white Americans get a few pages of the history book, a few days, a month.
Yeah. 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 Look, I taught history. My second year at a school here in Tampa was a Christian school, and you look for Black history.
Yeah.
And as Sharon has spoken, it's a few pages.
Right.
Versus we know the rest of the book.
Yeah.
We know the hue of those who encompasses the pages. But again, American history is legitimately Black history from its start. Remember that Blacks came to America in 1619. When did the Mayflower come? Google it.
Or then
Google it.
Get your Google machines out.
People came to America before the settlers from Europe came to bring in colonization.
Yes.
From New England.
Yep.
So, from England. So to me, Black people were here first. So American history legitimately is Black history. But I do want to say, I've spoken, of the church's responsibility. The church's responsibility is not just to her members, but to the community at large.
That's right.
And I believe that the Black church must also go out and to hold seminars in communities, to go to libraries and host days and where they can teach on Black history or do that. The Black church's job is not just to herself, but it is to the larger community in which she is in. And to me, Black people aren't the only people in that community.
That's right.
And so it would cause her to teach not just her own people, but to teach abroad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me read some of the other responses. Of course, Now said earlier that parents are responsible. Sarah Gilbert says, I totally agree that you cannot teach American history without teaching Black history. Without Blacks, there would be no history. Absolutely, because, we can go back to the garden. Brianna Robinson says, everyone that knows about Black history, they should be responsible for teaching Black history. Parents, preachers, teachers, elder, etc. And Brianna, I think you hit on something very important, because you said everyone that knows about history, Black history, should be the teachers of it. And that's where we got some work to do. even within the Black community. A lot of us were taught in schools and during a time where we knew probably three things about Black history. Black people were enslaved, and they came from Africa and they were enslaved here in the States. Um, then we also were taught, oh yeah, we knew that African people practice voodoo, because that was important to be in their textbooks back at that time, because then that made that they tried to then present Black people as being less than human, and that's
Right.
why we practice voodoo and those sorts of things. The other thing we knew about Black history, we knew about Rosa Parks, and not the entire story. We also knew about Martin Luther King. Those were the things we learned about our history during the time I was going to grade school. And so, what I think Brianna is pointing out is that everyone has a responsibility to teach it, but they have to know it. And that's where, some of us had to go and brush up. There were things I learned about Black history that happened when I was in seminary that I didn't know. I did not know, about some things. I think about Juneteenth. I remember when I learned about Juneteenth. I didn't learn about Juneteenth when I was in grade school. I didn't learn about Juneteenth in high school. You know, as far as I know, the Emancipation Proclamation was it on, the 1st of January. So we have a responsibility to know. We've read Sharon's comment. Jackie said, if Black parents would make it a priority, that would handle it. But our homes are lacking. Schools are not doing it. Selective teaching is status quo in the U.S. Black history is overlooked on purpose, and not just on purpose, but it's overlooked for a purpose, also for a reason. My uncle used to say, a man can steal you of your money, but they can't steal your mind. And so he was always talking about educating yourself. Know that stuff in here, so that when someone comes and try to, say, conflate critical race theory and Black history and act like all of that is Black history, the beginnings of Black history, then we know that if we're educated, we can then take them and point out their error. So Rachel says, good evening, Miss Rebecca and Marcus. I just logged on to Facebook. From what I'm hearing, I agree with you both. Thank you. Good evening, Renita. That's my cousin. Carrie says, a multicultural church represents the community in which they are physically and geographically located. Carrie, I think sometimes it
Right.
reflects
Right. Yeah.
those communities,
They probably
because
should,
yeah, I see, because
but they
of
don't.
gentrification and things like that. I see I see Black churches moving to the suburbs and white churches moving into the urban areas. And so they're coming to evangelize to a community that they don't necessarily understand. So Carrie made a correction here. She said a multicultural church should represent. Got you,
It
Carrie.
should,
Thank
yeah, because in essence, we see all the time
Yeah,
multicultural churches, and I can name several who are in a particular community, and they drive
yeah,
miles to go get a certain demographic to make their
yeah,
church look a certain way.
yeah.
I can name two off the top of my head right now where they literally go and bust people in from an urban community
Right,
to
right.
bring them to their services, have
Mhm.
incentives to
Yes,
for them to come to the service so
yeah,
that they can have that optic and that view,
right.
and so, yeah, I agree. I agree, Perry.
Yeah,
It should look like it's community.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So Pastor Isaac Lane says, I don't see white parents teaching their white kids about the evil dealings of their own bloodline.
because they don't
Ooh,
they
Pastor
don't
Lane.
believe they don't believe there's
I
any
wish,
evil
I
dealings in
wish.
their bloodline.
Now you're gonna have to come on Tuesday together, talk, so we
Yeah,
can talk
I wish we could
specifically.
pull him on screen right
I
now.
know,
He
I
knows he
know,
knows
right?
good doggone well
Right, right.
they don't
So
believe in the evil dealings.
um, you know, the thing is that what has people have tried to ignore over time is the evil of enslavement of Black people, and they also try to dehumanize Black people so that it just doesn't look like it was that bad of a thing. One thing in particular I have actually enjoyed reading on social media here lately is the caption that has Ruby Bridges as she is walking to school or something. I can't remember exactly what the picture said, but it was like, if she could, go through whatever her experience was, why is it that uh, white children can't sit uncomfortable long enough to learn about her experience? Because at least they're not having to endure the pain. I mean, think about when schools were first desegregated, some of the experiences that Black children had and their parents as they were trying to prepare them to go into these all white schools. They were, abused and threatened and all sorts of things that they had to go through. And yet you want to say that Black history makes white people uncomfortable? Um, let's be honest. Most of the Black lived experience in America requires us to endure being uncomfortable. We have learned how to wear uncomfortability as just an everyday occurrence, which then we start dealing with some of the results and effects of that, which is high blood pressure, heart disease, and all those other things. But how dare people suggest that we don't have to deal with being uncomfortable? When we go into the bank, we have to be uncomfortable because we don't know if we're going to be treated like a customer that has money in the bank, or are we going to be treated as somebody that is just walking in the bank to rob the bank? People are suspicious when we walk into stores, when we drive down the street, when we go into court hearings, or whatever that experience is. A lot of times Black people have to be uncomfortable when we go in for our treatments in clinical settings and things. We are often uncomfortable because we don't know if we're going to be treated as a human being, or if we're going to be treated less than because people see us as undeserving. So, forget the uncomfortable conversation. Marcus, um, let's see. Sarah Gilbert says our Black history has been lied about for so long, and our BLAB. Maybe she's saying Black lived. I'm not sure. But Sarah, tell me what you mean there. Are Black faces changed into white ones? It's hard to find the real facts. Sarah, it's not hard to find the real facts, but we have to read. We have to read, and we have to know who we're reading. You can't, I mean, there's some books by some Black authors that are questionable, but you have to know who you're reading. So it's important that we do read. And, there's always a Dr. Rufus Burrow book somewhere that will give you some insight into our history and our lived experience and things. So there's always a book available if you want to hear some facts. So anyway, Marcus, that's I think we've gotten through that question. I said I had a surprise for you, Marcus. So y'all hold on for a minute. I'm getting ready to give Marcus this surprise, and I'm going to explain this picture after I put it up, okay? So, Marcus, do you remember that picture?
Vividly.
Okay, so tell the audience what was going on in that picture.
Oh man, so PBS was doing the special on the Black Church by Dr. Come on, help me with his name, Rebecca.
I know exactly who you're talking
Yeah, I
about.
can't think of his name right now either.
All I have to do
And
is
I've
look.
got the book. It was
Yeah.
in my thesis.
Oh shoot, that's horrible.
Gosh,
It's Ryan is
Henry Louis Gates.
exactly. There
Henry
you
Louis
go.
Gates
Okay.
was
I was gonna say,
doing
Sharon, help us.
right was doing his PBS special on the
Yeah.
Black Church, and we know that he has done so many wonderful documentaries that PBS has aired, Blacks in America, and so many more.
Hmm.
And it was late. I think that was part one. It was the initial one, and it was after 9 o'clock. And I did not want my boys to miss this special.
Hmm.
And so they didn't go to sleep. My wife was upset because their bedtime is 8:30 on a good day, and it was after 9, and I had them up watching that special on PBS about the Black Church by Dr. Henry Louis Gates. And so yeah, and I had to take a picture of them
Yeah.
watching that, and they were attentive.
Yes.
That was great.
Yeah.
That was great that you got that. That was
Okay,
great.
so I'm going to show it again because I want the audience, now that they have context, I want them to look at the boys' faces
Yeah.
so that they can understand how what happens when a parent involves their children in learning Black are excited for what they are seeing. I mean, they're sitting there, they're attentive, and they are curious. And so, really, that picture to me speaks volumes. That I think at that point it looked like maybe three
Yeah.
and
3 and 5.
5, 3 years old and 5 years old. That's what happens when we take that responsibility and own it. If we start teaching our children early on about their history, not happening just in the schools, we're not going to wait for the school system to do it. We're going to take the initiative as parents to teach our children. So, thank you for allowing me to share.
That was beautiful. So I want to just say this, and I think this ties into that, and it's great. And you mentioned her earlier. So for this month, I have printed coloring sheets. There's a Black-owned puzzle company.
Mhm.
You can find them on Instagram. This is a plug for them. It's called Huddle Puzzles. But you can print out Black coloring sheets of people. So I printed it out, and we've been coloring it, with the boys, and been watching, PBS cartoon specials, about Black figures and things like that. And so Rosa Parks came up,
Mhm.
and of course we hear the story, and my wife was asking them, well, why did Rosa, not want to get up and move to the back of the bus? And of course Micah, who's the 6-year-old now,
Mhm.
said, well, she was tired, and I let them say that, I want them to get their time, but that next day, when they came home from school, I explained the story to them
Mhm.
about what history doesn't tell us about what Rosa Parks and why she didn't get up,
Right.
because Rosa Parks, while she was sitting there, she was interviewed sometime later and said, it's not because I was tired.
Mhm.
She said, I was thinking a year earlier about the story I heard down in Mississippi about a young boy who was beat and thrown into a river.
Yeah.
And we know his name, don't we?
Yep.
We know his name, Emmett Till.
Yep.
And she said, I couldn't get Emmett out of my mind. And that's why I didn't get up.
Yeah.
And we aren't told that.
Yeah.
We hear the nice, beautiful story of, oh, well, Rosa, was tired, or Rosa
Yeah.
was just tired of, being asked to go. No, she couldn't get the memory of Emmett Till out of her mind and said, no, I won't go back to the back of the bus.
Right. Right.
And I explained that to my children.
Yeah. Yeah. Those images that forever live in our minds, and serve as a reminder to how we are thought of in this country, the threat of living while Black in this country. Um, and for me, that is never far from my mind when I'm thinking about my son and him, out in the, doing whatever he's doing, going to work every day, going to school and everything. I realize he could be very innocent doing what he is supposed to do, and yet can easily become a victim because of his black skin. So those images are forever planted or cemented in our minds, and it serves as reminder as to how black people have been treated, historically and even present day. I'm going to read this. I want you all to respond to this next question as I go through and read some more comments. Um, the question is, what is the threat to Black history when it is not taught by Black people?
Mm.
So I'm going to read
Yeah.
some of your questions, responses, and actually, Rachel kind of answered this before I even put it up there. So Rachel says, I think that Black history's been watered down in the schools. Nobody wants to teach Black history in truth. They want to sugarcoat it, and that is not right. I thank God my mother taught me and my sister about Black history when we were younger. She was determined to educate us about our history. Absolutely. Thank you. Um, Sarah Gilbert said, beautiful reaction. I know she's talking about the boys, Micah and Junior. Uh, Rachel says, what is the threat to Black history when it's not taught by Black people? It is changed completely,
Yeah.
watered down, sugar coated, and lost in ignorance of people who know nothing about Black history. Um, Sarah said Rosa was tired of the BS. All right now, Sister Sarah. Linda Johnson said Rosa had conviction and was over it. She probably felt like, no, not today. Every now and again, you catch a Black woman on the right day. You're going to get exactly what you asked for. And that is, I shall not be moved.
Yeah.
Just like a tree planted by the water,
Yeah.
I shall not be
Yeah.
moved. I'm going to stay the course until something changed. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what they did. And those are the things about history, when it's taught in, sometimes taught by people that don't have that Black lived experience. A lot of times they miss the context, they miss the spirit of the history. They, you don't have the sense of the importance, the relevance of to how it has impacted us today. A lot of times they want to disconnect Black history from how our today's experiences are, and that's because it is often taught by folks that really just don't understand it. Nicole White, the lady Nicole White says, I work in predominantly white school district and they do not teach Black history in any of my schools. I feel obligated to do that for the few Black students that attend my schools. And we have to be creative sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to just find an end, whether you're sitting in a meeting or and somebody has a comment and you just interject some historical experience that's relevant to what the
Right.
conversation is today.
Right. Right.
We have to get creative about how we teach history. You may not have that opportunity to get up and do a whole presentation, but you can bring that history into today's reality.
And I'll even say that you can, I think one of the greatest gifts, number one, is a book.
Yeah.
I literally one of the greatest gifts. We want to give people clothing. We want to give people, technology, toys, and things like that. When I buy my children toys, I buy them a book as well.
Yes.
My boys, just like I have a library, they have one in their room.
Yeah.
And they have a great majority of their books are by Black authors and Black, books. But I say gifting someone with a book
Yes.
of Black education is such a great resource and such an easy thing that we can do for other people. And Yolanda, well, I know her as Yolanda. She's Nicole White on there.
Yes.
Um,
Right.
she is predominantly in a white school district, and I tell her, and she does a wonderful job at sending stuff to other school psychologists. She sends
Mhm.
something out, I believe, weekly, or or she's been doing something every day,
Yeah.
from a black psychological standpoint. And she, on Friday, the educational staff is afforded to wear, jeans and some kind of a relaxed shirt. Well, since she's in that place and space, last week she wore a shirt that says "Black Psychologists Matter." Just simple
Yeah.
things like that. And she texted me the other day saying, "I think I'm going to go participate in graduation this year." And I said, "I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think it's not only beautiful to be a black woman in doctoral
That's
regalia,
right. That's right. Yeah.
but to also show to some little girl who might be there with,
Yes.
or some, oh my God, a
Yes.
black woman that's a doctor.
Right.
I think that is an important presence.
Yes.
And that's how we teach history.
Yes.
That I can't wait, and I'm going to preview it now that, I've been doing Black women in history, celebrating Black women. I can't wait to feature my wife
Yeah.
as being a first Black doctor, a first doctor in her family,
Yes.
and one of the first Black doctors to graduate her program
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
at her school. So I think, those things, that representation is important.
Yeah. Okay, Sharon says that so many threats. One is that our history starts with enslavement when others teach it. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
We are not slaves.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah,
We are
that's
people with
good.
a full history predating the rest of the world.
That's
And
Rufus
that's
Burrow's daughter. That is
that
Rufus
is
Burrow's daughter.
why, I know we talk about
Yeah.
interwoven weaving American history and black history, but black history existed before the Americas. And
Yes.
that's why that's what we have to get at. We have to teach our kids, we have to teach some adults who we were before that boat ride over from Africa. We have to teach our children, preachers, teach your congregations who we are in the Bible, where we are represented. Teach them about Africa as represented in the Bible. Um, Marcus, go ahead. I feel
Well, this seminarian.
yeah,
And I don't down him. I actually celebrate him. I love it, and I think it is very beautiful. Thomas Oden, in his book, How Africa Shaped the Christian Mind. I think it is wonderful. But it's the fact that Thomas Oden had to be the one to, to validate
yeah,
Africa's, contribution to Christianity.
yes, yes,
And the fact, like I said, don't down Thomas Oden because he's
yeah,
a wonderful
yeah,
white chocolate brother.
yeah, yeah,
But it's just in the fact that we preachers,
yeah,
we've got it. We've got scholars
right,
who have to do a better job. And my brother Isaac Lane, who's on here, was also a student in the PhD program, is challenging me in that area that we've got to do scholarly work within the Black context about what we know about our Black history in the
yeah,
church.
yeah.
And we've got to do that.
I remember being in seminary and Dr. Ron Somerville, um,
Yeah.
yeah, my one of the history, just one of the greatest history minds there is out there. He taught the class History of Christianity in Africa, and that class, it
Blew your mind.
yeah, it blew my mind because I had never heard,
Yeah.
it was new,
Yeah.
and so that's what I mean about a lot of what I learned about black folks, Africa, our ancestors. I learned in seminary. I did not learn in
The church.
yeah, I didn't learn in grade school. I didn't learn in high school. And so the point I want to make is that's another reason why we need to have scholars in institutions.
Yeah.
We need them
Yes.
in these academic institutions
Yeah.
because not only are they teaching Black students about our history, they're also teaching white students who
Yeah.
have definitely received a false narrative education about Black history.
Yeah.
So Brianna Robinson says the Rosa Parks was a great example of a threat if it's not taught by Black people, given a story half told. Absolutely. We did only hear little bitty paragraph, 4 sentences or something about Rosa Parks. Linda Johnson says, unfortunate, I work in a diverse school district. We as
Mm,
teachers have free reign to teach Black history. We
mm.
go all in. It's truly amazing. So sad that Black history is not taught as it should be. Black history is American history.
So I have a question for Linda. So she said she has free reign, but
Yeah.
I question how much of it is in the curriculum that your school district puts out.
Yeah.
You have free reign, but how much is it included
Yeah.
within the curriculum?
So
Because of
if
how you do it,
right,
if it's not in the curriculum, other teachers have the freedom to not teach it because it's not in the
right,
curriculum. So I
right.
question her on that. Is it in the curriculum? Because
Yeah.
for me, I had to go outside of the curriculum to teach it.
Yeah. So
Um,
if a substitute was to come in and teach Linda's class one day during while she was teaching Black history, would they know what to teach?
yeah,
Because if it's not in the curriculum, if it's not in it, involved in the textbooks, and if it's only isolated incident, so to speak, in Linda's classroom,
yeah,
then there's the void. There's the
yeah.
gap in the education piece. There's the lack of consistency in what's being taught. Yolanda Nicole says, yes, I send a Black history figure every day that paved the way to Black psychology. Thank you, Yolanda. Jackie, Jackie, thank you so much. Jackie's watching over there on YouTube, and I
All
appreciate
right,
that.
all right.
Jackie said, I learned about Black Wall Street at age 66.
Wow,
Right. I know
wow,
what you're saying. Why did I not know of its existence and its demise sooner?
wow.
White people kept that story hidden.
Because they
And
burned it down.
right,
They don't
they,
want to. They don't want to. They don't want to. You know, the light shine on them that they
yeah,
burnt a black commerce, a black city down.
yeah.
Yeah, man, they
And a
burned it
number
down.
of those stories, especially if you were raised in the North, a number of those stories were not necessarily what we would hear even from our grandparents or, our great grandparents and folks. Um, we didn't always hear some of the details of these stories. Some of them were kind of not necessarily glossed over, but they just weren't stated in conversations. So Brianna says another threat would be not showing the full strength of Black people and education of Blacks. Absolutely. Dumbing us down. Um, so Janice Smith, Minister Janice Smith, Evangelist Janice Smith,
Hey,
she said evangelist the other day, so that's what I'm gonna call her. I thank God for Rosemary Branch, who taught Black history and taught my daughters things I
yeah,
was never
Mother
taught.
Brand,
And I think she's talking about Mother Branch at
Mother
St.
Brand.
John Primitive Baptist Church, uh, who is an just a
Yeah,
shining example of
yeah,
teacher,
yeah,
educator,
yeah,
exemplifies it, lives it.
yeah,
And that's so important. If you can, sometimes it's not even the folks that have to come in with the book. It's the folks that can sit you down and
yeah.
tell the story and
Life
paint
story.
the
Yeah,
picture and remind you of their experience and what they've endured or what their parents endured, and they tell those stories to us and they become alive. We need more of that in the church. And we don't just need it during Black History Month, although I
right.
am thankful that there is a Black History Month.
Yeah,
But imagine if a church takes a full year
no,
of teaching Black history as maybe their Sunday school, church school, VBS, Vacation Bible School lesson. Whenever they have some sort of teaching moment, that they are teaching something related to Black history. Imagine if a church takes the opportunity and that was their year of Christian education, Black
Wow.
Christian education.
Wow.
Our
Beautiful.
kids, our congregations would be more informed.
Yeah, I think it's very important, and I think, and I just remember the words of Dr. Burrow,
Yeah,
challenging uh, preachers to, to not just be about cute devotionals, and
yeah,
that we ought to be doing more than that. And so I think we have such a great challenge for us as preachers in the Black church,
yeah,
to where, yeah, we do need that spiritual intake for us to go and to deal with the harsh realities of this world,
yeah,
but we need so much more than that. A good shout every Sunday and 3 points and a close is not enough.
right.
It is
Yeah,
not enough for us.
yeah,
And we denigrate the mind, as James Hall Cone said, with just, this regular church service that we have, when we could do so much more to educate our people
right.
beyond the spiritual antics that we give them Sunday after
Yeah,
Sunday. And the pandemic has forced us
yeah,
to go beyond that, because your little cute, little stuff that you held, when people were in, didn't hold you in front of that camera when you were empty. And
yeah,
so much more has to be given from us, that we have to give to the people. And like you said, I think that is wonderful. Black 365, yeah, that we are not relegated to just 28 days of the
yeah,
month, that we have to do much more. And that, to me, that I cannot allow the church off the hook for that. For me, parents are important, but to me, the church is so much more important to
yeah,
teach, our history, to be the gatekeepers, to be, the heralds of our history.
right.
Um, and I hold the church mainly responsible for that. For me, from my vantage point and my convictions.
The point that you were just making about the spiritual piece, it reminded me of one of the things that I did learn as I was in class with Dr. Somerville. When you learn that our people believe not only about God up there,
Hmm.
but we believe that God in us,
Yes. Yes.
God above us, but around us, all through us. We believe
Yeah.
that God operated in us. And so teaching Black history from that position, if you feel like you need that spiritual component, you can add that in there, how our descendants believe that God operated through us.
Hmm.
And not in a idolatry
Yeah.
manner, but it was because we were created
Created.
in the
Yeah.
image of God
Yes. Yeah.
and we were God's children. And so, just like any parent to a child, your child has some of your DNA.
Right.
And because of that, then God operates and moved in us because God's DNA is in us.
Right.
And so we as preachers and pastors, we can do our congregations and our children such a great service if we would focus on really understanding who we are and accepting who we are as Black people, and reminding our children that yes, we are descendants of kings and queens, um, and we are God's children. So Sarah said it's sad, but I don't think many of them know themselves about that Black history. They were sold on the white man, brainwashing and diminishing our history. And I understand exactly what Sarah's saying because, uh, in order to poison people's minds, you have to dehumanize them and diminish their position in society. And so that's why keeping our history away from us, and teaching us that we are something that is really opposite of who we were born to be, is the way that people, you know, have was able to enslave us. But like my uncle said, You know, you can take my money, but you can't take my mind. You might even enslave this body, but you can't enslave my mind. And I think that Black people were able to survive all that they went through because of that. You can't enslave our mind.
Right.
Okay, go ahead, Marcus.
And I think the mind, I think, is critical, and I agree with Sarah. I agree with Sarah, and I think the importance of it is we must know our own history. And
Yes.
I don't, like I said, I'm not upset hearing that Black history may be taken out. Critical race theory is threatened. Private or public schools to not be taught. Again, it is a theory, so I mean, I do understand that issue. But again, we must know our own history, and that starts with reading. There's so Kevin Cosby, Reverend Dr. Kevin Cosby, St. Stephen's,
Great preacher in Louisville.
Great preacher.
Yes,
oh my God, love him. Says that we're taught our history, that of Black history, probably 30% of it, and I would even shrink it to that to say maybe 20% of our real history. Like even the shirt I have, you can't really see it. It's a shirt of Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass, advisor to presidents, and we would credit Abraham Lincoln to being our friend and such a starch proponent for Black people. When really Abraham Lincoln was just an anti-slaverist. He didn't believe in slavery, but that didn't necessarily mean that he really was pro-Black.
Right.
Abraham Lincoln really wanted to ship Black people off after he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. He wanted to, and it was a war document, not necessarily in the fact that he said, this is best for the country. No, it was a war document that in order for us to win the war, we needed Blacks to do it. They did it, so we're going to ship, we're going to let them free. But he wanted to send them to a place, Google it, called Lincolnia. Google it. This is Black history.
Get your Google machines and Google it.
Lincolnia.
Yeah.
He wanted to remove all Black people from America and send them to a place called Lincolnia.
Yeah.
Okay? And so these are things that we're not taught in history.
Right.
And so that you have to read for yourself. Right. I'm not saying Abraham Lincoln was a bad man, but I'm not saying that he was a proponent for Black folks either.
Yeah.
Know your history.
Well, Linda responded to your question, Marcus. She said, that is true. It is not in our curriculum. The educators in my group confer, and our library is full of books by Black authors and others. We share this information on our Facebook page. Thank you, Linda, for responding.
That's beautiful.
Janet says that, yes, she taught, at least she's talking about Mother Brent, she taught at Bogosiega High School. And Sarah says, it breaks my heart and hurts my soul when I walk into a Black church and see a picture of a white Jesus. Sarah, look, we gonna have that conversation. We're gonna continue this conversation. This is just part one. On the 22nd of February, we will have Reverend, Elder, Pastor, Bishop. I give him all those titles. Reginald Holmes, who is a pastor in Colorado, he's going to join us for a conversation, part two of this conversation. So I think that we're off to a good start. I didn't get to ask all the questions, but I want to know real quickly, if you have a second, Marcus, I want to know how people are celebrating Black History Month. So Marcus, while they're answering, I want you real quickly to tell me what you are doing as a pastor within your church to celebrate Black History Month.
So within our church, not only am I in a series entitled Blackish. Blackish is my favorite show. ABC, I'm sad to see that it is going off in its 8th season, but like the Cosby Show, it ended in its 8th season, and so Blackish is ending in its 8th season. So we are doing that in that series and talking about our story and history in the biblical context. But we are also seeding into Black businesses. And so not that we are going and buying anything. No, we are actually sending a seed to Black-owned minority businesses. And so I'm happy about doing that. It's not much, but there are at least 3 businesses that we are sowing into, just giving a gift and trying to promote them because I think that we should be buying Black. I think that's very important that we support our own and that
Yeah.
we patronize them, not only with our shares on Facebook, which is great, but
Mhm.
also with our dollars. So that's what we're doing out at the church that I serve.
Okay. Well, I don't think I got any comments, but please feel free to add to this question even after the segment end. Let
What
me know
about you?
what you're doing to celebrate Black History Month. So, of course, oh, Linda says I'm purchasing books on Black history and giving them as gifts. That's wonderful. I
That's
love
beautiful.
that.
That's
I
beautiful.
love that.
That's
Um,
beautiful.
I might be just a little bit selfish right now with what I'm doing, which
Okay.
is I'm just perusing uh my husband's library, his study
That's beautiful.
of the Black women authors in his library, but I'm also reading a lot of what of his his works.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that. I'm also trying to take the opportunity whenever I can to just drop a little nugget on somebody about Black history. And of course, we're doing this series here um, about ensuring that Black history is not erased. So I want to close this by letting you know that no, I do not believe Black history can be erased. It can't be. As long as we um, take ownership and remember our responsibility for teaching, then we don't have to worry about a piece of legislation outlawing Black history or any of those things. We just don't. And if necessary, we do like our mothers and fathers did. They started schools
Mm.
to ensure that we were being taught. So, no, thank you, Linda. I appreciate it. Linda says, I agree. So, we don't have to worry about it. But what I want you all to do first, I want to thank you all for joining this conversation. Part two is going to happen on February the 22nd at 6 p.m. with Reverend Reginald Holmes, pastor
Major.
out of
Very major.
Colorado. And so I'm excited. He is a dynamic speaker
Yes.
and preacher.
Yes.
Uh, and he's going to probably push the envelope a little bit because that's just who he is. And so, of course, he'll be sitting in the right seat here on Tuesday Together Talk because that's what we believe in, right? We believe in being honest and making sure that our opinions are heard. I want to thank some of our first time folks coming in on Tuesday Together Talk. Minister Janice Smith, Linda Johnson. Thank you all for joining us. Make sure you come back. Brianna, it's good to have you back again. And Brianna, I owe you some information and it is coming. Jackie, it's good that you could come and hang out with us. You stay warm in Indianapolis. Yolanda, thank you for being here to support your husband. Sharon, my daughter, thank you so much for being here and for your comments. I keep telling her I'm going to get her on here, and I am going to do
We
so.
love that show.
So thank you all so much. Sarah, for your faithful attendance. Carrie, for your faithful attendance. Pastor Isaac Lane, thank you so much for being here. My cousin
Happy
Renita,
birthday.
who hung
Yes,
out.
yes,
Yes,
yes.
Isaac, Pastor Isaac, happy birthday. My cousin Renita, thank you for being here. And Rachel, for your faithfulness. I thank you so much. I hope I didn't miss anybody. I know that my friend Niall that usually hangs out with us, he's been on and off tonight because he's supposed to be working. So we want him to keep his job. Now you watch this in replay, okay? So thank you all so much. Remember, you can find us at www.reconciliationandequity.com, www.reconciliationandequity.com, or you can follow us on Facebook at Reconciliation and Equity. You can also follow us on YouTube and Instagram at Reconciliation and Equity. So make sure that you share this video, like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, become a follower here of Facebook. We're not going to hurt nobody, we promise. And we here to just have real talk, real conversations, and to be able to do what we do, and that's to hopefully allow people to having to get their opinion out, have some conversation, but also to provide a bit of education one to another. It is the exchange of information. So thank you all so much to my guest tonight, Reverend Markus-Derek White. God bless you and keep leading. And we'll check you out, your new Bethel Facebook page for your Blackish series, right? All right. All right, Carrie, thank you. Great conversation. God bless you all. You all stay tuned as we get ready to close out and say goodbye to you all. Stay tuned for our takeout. All right.